if you go to any retail establishment, think of grocery store, gas stations, things like that, what's usually right, at hip height, eye level, right up by the cash register? What tends to be right there at the cash register?
Yo, I would say like I see a lot of like gum and peanuts and chips and kind of like wet wipes, things that you can just grab and go is
Mm-hmm.
usually what I
Mm-hmm.
see.
Candy's usually a big one, especially at grocery stores, things like that. Now, why would they be putting those types of things right there at the cash register?
Hey Tanner, so excited for today's conversation where we're going to be talking all about increasing profitability. And this is something that many business owners, we have to circle back to time and time again to just check on. So I'm excited to kind of dive into the conversation a little deeper. Yeah, what are your kind of like initial thoughts on that?
I love when we actually get to talk about profitability inside of a business. We've done so many different conversations with various business owners, from just, conversations in like podcast settings like this to some of our clients. And, as I look at kind of those conversations, this topic of money within the business or profitability or how do we increase that tends to be a very recurring theme. It's probably the number one thing that keeps popping up. So figured it'd be good to spend maybe a few episodes for us talking about different things and like what specifically can we do to increase profitability. And yeah, that I'd love to start with a little bit of a framework to give some context, but before we do, how important is profitability to you in your business, Kay?
It's so important. You think about that's how we sustain, that's how we grow, that's how we can hire employees, and that's how we can like get to that next level of business. So I think as I get into business now, a couple years in, I feel like that is more at the front of what I'm thinking about is profitability because without it, we can't really run the business and then things can go the wrong way or something. So I think it's a good thing to focus on.
I love that. It's the conversation, like it can be really easy to fall into the trap of thinking about sales and revenue, which yes is important, but if we're not paying attention to profitability, it can be really easy to make $100,000 but spend $100,000, and we're not actually getting anywhere within the business. The business is meant to provide profitability. So I'd love to just share a quick framework on how do we do this? Because if I just told you to go make more profit tomorrow, my guess is you probably sit there and go like, okay, great, but what do I need to go do? Like, how do I actually go do that? So when we work with a lot of our clients, we have this fun framework. So I'll throw it up on the screen here and I'll talk through it. So if you need to rewind, go back to it. But when we talk to most business owners, most of the time they can tell us how many customers they have, what the revenue is, and then maybe if there's any profitability. Those are kind of the three numbers I usually can get. The challenge with those three is that these are really just results. Kind of like I said before, if I told you to go make more profit tomorrow, it's hard to just go do that. If I told you to make more sales tomorrow, easier, but still kind of this, I don't know specifically what to do. Or if I told you to get more customers. So the whole premise of what we do is we break that out. Customers is really your number of leads or the people that could do business with you times your conversion rate. How many people actually decide to buy? Those two areas we can actually do some things about. There's some strategies and tactics there. Once we have customers, then it's about how many times they buy from us during the time period. So if we're thinking, how do I make more profit this year? It's how many times they buy from us in a year, and how much they spend on average. Are they spending $10 each time they come in? Or are they spending $1,000 each time? So we look at those two things. We multiply customers times number of transactions times average dollar sale. That gets us to our sales number, our revenue. And then from revenue, we multiply our profit margins. Margins is essentially the expenses and everything else that comes along with it, and margin is what's left over. So if you're looking at revenue of 100,000, but you have a 95% expense ratio, so your margins are only 5%. For 5%, you're only going to walk away with $5,000, right? That's kind of how that works. I know that's a really big kind of framework to think about. We're not going to go super deep into the whole thing today, but I wanted to take maybe one of those: getting more leads, improving our conversion rate, increasing the number of times people buy from us, how much they spend on average, or how we actually improve some of those margins within the business. Those kind of 5 areas. I'd love to pick like one of them over the next, pick one today, maybe one next week as we continue these conversations, get into what are some specific things that we can do in our businesses to improve that number. So of those five, leads, conversion rate, number of transactions, average dollar sale, and margins, which one do you think we should start with today?
Ooh, this is good. They're all good. But I'm kind of vibing with like average dollar sales. That one really piqued my interest today.
Beautiful. So we'll talk a little bit about that one. And as we go through this, I think it'd be fun to talk through what can work in many businesses, what some things have worked in the past, and then maybe as we go through this, Kate, like how can you use it? What are some things that you can do within your business? I'll give a little context for the audience. Just because it's in the order of like top to bottom in that framework does not mean that that's the best way to go after like tackling each one of these. I'm going to give you that super quick here. The margins is usually the first place we start. It's usually the easiest to make some movement in. Once we kind of tweak some things within profit margins, we move on to conversion rate. That's usually the next easiest one to move up. Average dollar sale comes in at number 3. Then we move to number of transactions. And finally, the last one that we do is lead generation or more leads. Now, there's a big reason for that. Lead generation, when you look at everything else on this sheet, that's the one that tends to require more money, more financial resources in general to generate leads, right? That's your marketing budget, things like that. So we always like to look at how do we improve your profit before having to go buy more leads. So just a little bit of context there. So average dollar sale. When you think of average dollar sale, what do you think of? How would you define average dollar sale even for your business, Kay?
Like looking at my business and I think of an average dollar sale, it would be taking all the different products or services that you have across the board, if you have different packages or different product prices, and it would be like the average amount that a customer or the average amount that they spend is my guess. Like if you took all of them together and did like the average of them all, that is what I'm thinking it is.
Yeah. So I absolutely love this one. So, let's, I usually use like a small hardware store is like a example business to take a look at this. So average dollar sale is, let's say we're looking at this from an annual standpoint, right? We're looking at 1 year. Average dollar sale, you've got lots of people that come into your little hardware store, but how much do they spend on average? So maybe they come in twice, maybe they come in once, whatever it is, but how much do they spend on average? Now, some people may walk in and they're buying a lawn tractor, right? They may be spending $5,000 as their like transaction amount. Other people may be walking in and just buying a paintbrush and walking out. Now, I always joke about that because, not kidding, my wife and son went to Home Depot a few months ago. I had this huge list of things they were going to go buy for this big project they were working on, all that kind of stuff, and they're walking all around, got super overwhelmed, literally walked out with a paintbrush for like $1.50. So it's like, yes, you can spend a lot of money or you can spend a little bit amount of money. When you take kind of all of your customers and all the different transactions that they do, what's the average? So maybe in a hardware store, maybe it's $100. You got some that spend $5,000, some that spend $1.50, but on average, they tend to spend about $100. So how do we increase that? What are some things that we can do to help that business increase? So simple example to get us kicked off. This is a retail environment, right? Little hardware store. If you go to any retail establishment, think of grocery store, gas stations, things like that. What's usually right, at hip height, eye level, right up by the cash register? What tends to be right there at the cash register?
I would say like I see a lot of like gum and peanuts and chips and kind of like wet wipes, things that you can just grab and go is usually what I see.
Candy's usually a big one, especially at grocery stores, things like that. Now, why would they be putting those types of things right there at the cash register?
Oh my gosh, it's total psychology. Like for me, I mean, it's so easy to just, oh, there's those Reese's cups that I love so much. Let me just grab those. It's just a quick, it's just like $1.50. Let's grab those or whatever. Yeah, I think it's super easy last minute decision. You're on your way out. Oh, I can just grab this. It's a couple bucks. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got to make this impulse buy and I'm going to put it in the cart. I love I love watching this happen. Walking into to stores like that with little kids. I've got a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old at home, and it's almost always, let's grab something that's eye level for them and let's put it right on the, in the cart or right up there at the checkout counter. Well, Dad, we got to put that in the cart, right? We got to have the candy bar. We got to have, this or that. And all of a sudden, my average ticket just went up. I just spent more than I was planning to because there was things right there, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is that impulse buy. So this is a way to increase our average dollar sale, is just by having little things like that that you can add into the cart. They're called kind of upsells or add-ons. If you're thinking from a digital environment, same thing. You have somebody go to a checkout page, they click on the thing that they're going to buy, but then all of a sudden something pops up saying, "Hey, do you want to add this to your order?" You think of HEB is fantastic at it. Amazon is fantastic at it. As soon as you hit add to cart, almost always the next thing that pops up is, based on your experience or based on your browsing history or based on your past purchases, you might want to be adding these to your cart too. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Click,
Yeah.
and it goes right into the cart. This is all the same formula, right? The same type of a thing to increase that overall average dollar sale.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about some things that I've experienced lately, just in little purchases, or, it's like, oh, add this for free shipping. And then my cart is doubled. Literally, that just happened to me. I was on and I needed one pair of shoes. Oh, but if I've shipped to store, it's still going to cost me $12 in shipping. Well, I add another $24 of product. Well, I don't just do the 24. It's another pair of shoes and some socks. And so all of a sudden I'm at like 150. Completely just happened.
Yep. Yep. So when you think about for your business, I know we haven't talked a whole lot about like what your business is and what you do, but for your business, how would you implement that strategy in your business? What are some ways that could kind of fit into what you do?
Oh, definitely. So I have services I offer, and they come in packages, and I could see if I did, say, the large package, or somebody wants that, or say they want a group coaching when I, coach my artists and DJs. I could put on an add-on, we'll have an EPK made for you for $250. Just add that right on. You're already spending XYZ. Why not have an EPK? So I was starting to think about that as you were mentioning the
Mm-hmm.
grocery store. I was like, how can I just add something that just increases that amount just a little bit?
Mm-hmm. And we don't need everybody to take it. I think that's the key with this particular strategy. You're still going to have people that are going to walk up to the counter, they're going to go into the checkout, they're going to get that little prompt from Amazon or HEB or whatever, and they're not going to add anything. That's okay. But simply by offering it and having it there, some percentage of people will say yes. It's back in the day, it used to be McDonald's always asked, would you like to add fries with that? Would you like to supersize it, right? There was all those little things that were in that scripting that they had to say, and a certain percentage of people would say yes. That's all we need. It's just a small percentage to say yes, and it will increase that overall average. Which leads to kind of another piece I think is really good, and I'm leaving out the easiest, simplest one for the last. But this next one is using a checklist. So we'll use that hardware store as an example once again. So someone comes in and they're looking for paint. They're going to paint a room, all that kind of stuff. So they're coming in, they're just looking to buy a couple gallons of paint. Cool. So they come in, working with the sales associate, takes them over to the paint, all that kind of stuff. But this sales associate is smart, and they pull out a little checklist and they say, "Hey, if you're buying paint today, did you make sure that you've gotten the painter's tape? Did you make sure that you've got paintbrushes? Do you have the different types of paintbrushes? Do you have the roller for the big areas and then the kind of the brushes for the corners and different areas like that? Do you have things to put over the carpet? Do you have, right? They just go through the checklist, and all of a sudden they're starting to increase this overall cart value simply because they're asking questions saying, you are actually solving a problem, which is painting this room in your house. You needed paint, but there's all this stuff that you didn't think about before. So let's just walk through and make sure that you have the things that you need. Very simple way to increase the overall average dollar value.
100%. I just experienced this. I laugh because last week I was just hopping into it was a salon that had a service done, and then there was aftercare that went with that service, and then they're upselling me as I was getting ready to travel. They're like, "Oh, you need the travel kit for your aftercare." And I bought, I bought one of the travel kits and then used that. But I definitely thought, just as you said that, I was like, that just happened to me last
Mm-hmm.
week.
Mm-hmm. So there's the checklist piece, which can also tie directly into what are the upsells, what are the cross sells, right? If I get this one service, the likelihood of needing these other services or being interested in these other services is pretty high. And all I
Mm-hmm.
have to do is make sure that we let them know that they're available and give them the opportunity to take the upsell or take the next thing. From you go back to a digital format, and if you're running like a digital funnel, something else like that. So we talked about the quick add-ons. These are known as bump products,
Mm-hmm.
but really successful funnels will also ascend you up their kind of value ladder. So you finish that page, and before you get to the thank you page, they're going to take you to another page that says, hey, by the way, you can actually, if you add to the cart right now, you can add this online education program for, $900. I don't know, just picking a number. And then, a certain percentage of the people will say yes, right? That's the upsell. And then it's
Mm-hmm.
going to move to maybe a third page. And that third page is going to be like, oh, by the way, book your one-to-one consultation. And that's going to be the next layer of upsell. And then it will take you to the cart. So it gives you like these opportunities to just ask for, based on what you told me, many people who are in your situation tend to also need this and also need this. So cross-selling and upselling is another big piece of how we continue to increase the average dollar sale. Doesn't have to hit for everybody. It just has to hit for a certain percentage of the people who do come in that front end part of buying the first thing that they came in for.
Definitely. I see that a lot now, and it does work, and it is helpful. Like, you think about it as your business owner, like if you go in, say you want paint and you don't really, not really that versed in painting, I think it's like very helpful that's a really great way to do it because you really can help your customers.
One of my favorite things to do about this is like when you think about increasing your average dollar sale, this impacts your profitability so much, right? So you've already acquired this customer. You've already spent all of the money and all of the focus and all of the energy to get them there to buy the first thing. Now, if we can get them to spend more with us, we make more per customer.
Mm-hmm.
And more than likely, if we're getting them to spend more with us, the likelihood of them being stickier and staying around longer is also a bit higher. So now all of a sudden, now not only do we have a greater average dollar sale, but the likelihood of them coming back and buying again or having a longer lifetime value is also increased in many cases. So it has this like exponential impact when you really focus on how do I serve the person in front of me by offering them more than just a little thing that they thought that they needed.
100%. I usually am like, oh yeah, this is really great. Another good one for this is like for women is Sephora Beauty. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you go in and you walk out with this teeny tiny little bag and it's like $300 in there and but the skincare routine. I mean, there's so many things you can see that there's like stackability or, services like that too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So before I give away the most obvious, easiest one to increase your average dollar sale, and we'll finish off with a couple other quick ones. First one, which also ties back into conversion rates, use sales scripts. Use kind of like the checklist format, but more from a salesperson's perspective. They're following the same checklist over and over. They're following the same script over and over. The likelihood of getting that average dollar sale to go up is much higher. But add value and give away perceived value. What does that mean? Right? So if you think about give away perceived value, what might that look like?
I use this a lot actually. This is a one where I say, like when you're signing up for my course, you get my network of over 2,000 contacts with people in the music industry who can help you or book you. And so that is that's a huge seller for a lot of my artists because they're like, oh, that's what I want. I want the connections you have. And so that is a really almost even invaluable resource that I give to them when they're part of my, wheelhouse, my collective, and they get that.
That's a fantastic example of it, right? What are the things that we can give away that technically cost us nothing and does have inherent value, but it really has massive perceived value to the person who's getting it? I'm buying this thing, but I also get this. That's amazing. I'm willing to pay more because I'm getting the additional perceived value. How do we add value to the overall stack? It's a really, really good one. There's we've got over 58 different strategies on this particular topic just to increase average dollar sale. I think a lot of these are the big ones that many businesses can use, but there's one that sits atop of this entire list, and it's the one that we actually spent an entire podcast talking about 2 weeks ago. Increase your prices.
Yes.
The number one way to increase the average dollar sale, and I will reiterate what I had said a couple weeks ago, is if you have not increased your prices in the last couple of years, that must be the first thing that you go do. It doesn't need necessarily mean you need to increase it by 50%, but 3%, 5%, 10% bump, depending on what the product is or what the service is. That's got to be the first place that you can start. Or what are some areas in the business that I can increase my prices on? We've got to start there. It's the easiest lever to pull. And oftentimes the reason we don't do that is more the business owner's fear of what would happen if a customer complains. And the reality is most don't. Most don't even recognize it if you're doing it tactically and thinking about how it all fits together. So that sits atop the list as number one thing to do is increase prices.
I have a good example for this, one that I just came up with. I'm rolling out a weekly group coaching rate for my artists, and it's significantly reduced because, we're all in this together, and we can all help each other grow within this hour. So I have the ability to create this package that is a lower rate than my executive coaching. So what I'm doing is I'm giving an introductory rate to anybody who signs up. The first 3 months is going to be at a certain rate, and then after that 3 months, it will go up. But it gives them that. It's like, hey, okay, I can test the waters here, and then get them, feeling really good, feeling like they're growing and see growth happening. And then they're going to stick around if I increase that. They're going to be like, this is worth it. This is worth it for me. So it gives them peace of mind. Hey, this investment is not crazy. I can do this. And then knowing after 3 months, it's going to go up. But if it's the right fit, then they'll stick around.
I really like that. So as we wrap this piece up, and I'm excited to get into a few more of these as we get into the next couple of weeks. So if you're listening to this, I'd love to hear. Kay, you get first choice when we get back to this next week. But in the comments below, share which one do you want to hear next. Is it increasing conversion rate? Is it the number of times people buy from you? Is it how do I improve my margins? Or lead generation? We will get to that one too. So we will go through all 5 of these here. But if you want to see a particular one next, make sure you put it in there. So as we wrap this thing out, Kay, what stood out to you from this conversation, kind of going through some different strategies to increase average dollar sale? What stood out to you? Which one resonated and you're like, I need to go try that one, or something that you need to improve upon, or something like that in your own business?
Well, what really stood out to me is that how much these work on me, thinking about and that's like, I say that in a really positive way because that means it can work for you and your business. And for me, I think it was that first one, because that one I hadn't thought about before with, selling my coaching, is how can I put those quick items at the checkout lane? You need a press kit, or whatever my artists need, and create these little mini values, like the really good peanut butter cups from Trader Joe's that I get every time when I'm in that line. So I think that one, actually, I want to get creative and see what kind of things I can build around that.
Ooh, that's cool. I love that. I'm excited to see that one. So for those that are listening, share with us, share this with somebody else who you think would get some great value out of increasing their average dollar sale. But which one stood out to you? Which strategy that we talked about today that you're like, I can't wait to go try that in my own business? Let us know how it goes in the comments. Tell us which one it was and what the result was. Love to see that as you continue to grow your businesses. So with that, I think we'll wrap this conversation here and come back with another one of these next week.
Yes, definitely drop them in the comments. I want to hear from you.